Hello, viewers. Welcome to MBTV Weekly Property Roundup. We bring to you top developments from Indian real estate space, which is going to have a lasting impact on you as consumer. I am Prasun Kumar, Marketing Head of Magicbricks, and with me is Jayashree Kurup, Senior Real Estate Journalist and Editor-in-Chief of MBTV. Welcome, Jayashree.
Thanks, Prasun.
First news that I want to discuss with you, Jayashree, is something which has been so long pending and has been such a big problem. It almost was the genesis of how problems in real estate got manifested and came to the fore, which was the default by Jaypee in Noida, Greater Noida, in terms of delivering their homes. And one of the key projects out of that, an upscale project, which was Jaypee Greens Knight Court. The construction of that is now likely to resume. And I do not know how many years or a decade has passed probably. But then the starting of this construction, what does it signify, for the industry, and what does it mean for consumers? What can they expect in future?
See, I think this lot of consumers were smart enough to work with the RERA. There was money. It was a cash flow positive project, and they decided to work with RERA and take on the construction of the project. This is two of Jaypee projects the RERA UP RERA has facilitated and allowed consumers to start construction with the developer himself building. It was, and as a result, what's happened is there's a continuity. It hasn't gone into any, restructuring problem. The project has continuity. There was a break, and now the same developers coming back and building, but it is under the aegis of RERA, which is monitoring it for quality, for timely completions, everything. All money is in escrow accounting, so consumers are willing to pay their money and get the project completed. I think it's one of the best models. In going forward for complete stuck projects, the best model is if they work with RERA, they work together. Let's assume that it is even not cash flow positive. It's a little short of cash flow. If the RERA is available there, and you know that whatever money you're putting in is going into completion of the projects, I don't think even consumers will object to putting in a little more money and completing the project. And I think this is one of the best examples.
Wonderful. And I think, Jayashree, there was a related news that had come also last week, where this $3.5 billion fund that Prime Minister had set up for completion of these things, that has started to now show result, as reported by news. That fund was the Swami Fund that we were talking about. Yeah?
It is the Swami Fund set up by, managed by SBI Caps. And Prasun, the good news is that, as had been announced by the Finance Minister, because of this, there are more funds coming up. Other banks are also setting up similar asset reconstruction funds. And, you need a good asset reconstruction model in the country. And working with RERA seems to be one of the best models.
Yes, absolutely. So from there, moving to a problem statement, Jayashree. Now, you just spoke about how RERA has been working with consumers to resolve these long pending issues and bringing a lot of supply and demand on track in real estate. But Telangana remains the only major state without a permanent RERA. Now, what could be the reason behind this when all states have more or less implemented and are moving forward? Why is Telangana lagging behind, and what can consumers of Telangana expect?
There are lots of political dimensions to this entire thing. I think the worst thing that could happen was states playing politics when it came to consumer protection laws like RERA. While there is a very rudimentary RERA office that has started, they don't have an adjudicating officer, they don't have an appellate tribunal, and they don't have clearly there has been no education in the state because they don't have any complaints or redressals that have happened. So it's a sad state of affairs, Prasun. But having said that, I don't think that Telangana's state laws are bad. I just think they need to put political differences aside and set up a consumer protection forum, RERA. And actually, it's against the law because it is a national law. And every state had to implement it. West Bengal has not implemented RERA, but it's implemented HERA, which is very similar to that. But Telangana is one state which has not done it so far. a very rudimentary apparatus set up and not much thought given to it.
And important because considering the importance of Hyderabad as a market,
Absolutely.
and it's one of the fastest growing and biggest markets of the country, so it's very important to put these regulations in place.
But if you remember, Prasun, when we did that consumer sentiment survey, the Hyderabad market is not plagued by the same problems that most of the other markets are plagued by. 53% of consumers said they will buy under construction projects, which means the faith in the system is very high. And so it's not a market that has where a lot of consumers have been cheated.
Yes, probably yes, absolutely. And I don't think there has been large scale developer default in that market. But that's just a matter of luck for consumers also in a way. It's always good to put processes and policies in place so that in future there are no shocks that come consumers' way. Yeah. All right, moving on to the next important development, Jayashree, up north in Gurugram. Now, 12 builders in Gurugram have failed to submit project details to the Director of Town and Country Planning, DTCP. And they may therefore, consequently face actions. Now, what are these details, and what would any kind of penal action mean for consumers here?
Prasun, Gurgaon has had a private developer model, right? And the private development was allowed. The developer could aggregate land, make the plans, submit it to the DTCP. Then all approvals had to be attached to it.
Yeah.
What has happened, and if you remember the ambience case, even there, there were no reports, there were no records, and no approvals that had been submitted, right? So that by the time when the dispute came between the developer and the consumers, suddenly you found that there was nothing. It was a private arrangement between the developer and the DTCP officials. So clearly there has been a lot of, the rules have been flouted big time here. And so the DTCP had stopped all registries, and they had gone out saying that all approvals are going to be checked, all papers are going to be checked. So developers have been submitting. Now these 12 developers, probably the same, you scratch my back, I scratch yours kind of thing. They have colluded with DTCP officials, and they haven't got all the approvals in place. So where will they submit all their registration papers? But today in Gurugram, I think a lot of cleanup is happening, and you've got a good set of officials sitting there. So I think it's only a matter of time before all this is ironed out and sorted out. But in the meantime, what happens is that when the market is it's not conforming to rules, this market has also been much slower than the other markets of the country.
Sure. And Jayashree, I just want to expand this, at a much larger level. I think in past of some of our shows, you have also spoken about how RERA so far has been mainly working towards consumer grievance redressal and all, and now it needs to take up an active role in terms of compliances as well, right? So do you think, because once a project comes into the public space and gets launched for consumers, RERA laws mandate the project to have all kind of approvals and show RERA registration number, and I'm sure the registration number is given after all the thorough checkups of the projects and everything else. So should RERAs across the country play a more active role in terms of looking at new projects that get launched, whether they have all approvals or not, so that consumers don't get cheated at the end of the day?
I think new projects is already happening. The legacy projects is where they are asking for the reports, and that's where all the papers have to be refiled. That's where they don't have all the approvals. But going forward, I think the future sorted. It's the present and the past that is being fixed right now.
Sure. Okay.
And also RERA laws themselves need to be amended. We ourselves have given the recommendation to the ministry, and unless that recommendation is acted on and a few tweaks are made in the RERA Act, the RERA regulators will continue to struggle like this.
Sure. And we have been talking about how they need to be given judicial powers also to implement some of their rulings.
Yeah.
So staying on with Gurugram, Jayashree, a little local issue there, which is Municipal Corporation of Gurugram has now junked DLF's plea to give them more time to finish pending infrastructure. Again, as you just mentioned, that Gurugram was a city that was built on private model, and DLF was responsible for developing infrastructure also for the parts where they were developing. What does it really mean at the end of the day? One, for Gurugram consumers, and two, for such policies where cities and townships are built, either on a PPP model or completely on private, equity infusion, and so what could be done to put, checks and balances so that things do not really go offline.
See, Gurugram is a very special case here because there were such large townships, and normally after the first 5 years, they have to pass on to the municipal authority. There was no municipal authority or development authority for such a large city. It grew organically, and
Very rapidly. Yeah.
very rapidly, and very high profile development as well. So now what's happened is that in the last 5-6 years there has been a municipal corporation of Gurgaon, and one by one all these private developments are passing back to the authorities. Now the private colonies, nobody ever checked whether they complied with everything that they had promised to give, whether it is water, power, drainage, sewerage. The civic infrastructure of a township has to be managed well. That municipal infrastructure was incomplete in many cases. Now, in the case of South City 1, South City 2, and Nirvana, the developer itself, Unitech, had gone defunct. So the authorities took over these townships without the developer completing all these projects, and it is facing a lot of problems because of this. Because if there was any land parcels left, they are able to sell them and monetize them so that they can use that money in the township, but not much is left. Remember, these were built from the 80s onwards. But in DLF's case, DLF is a functioning developer, and it had promised to complete all this civic infrastructure, which it has been asking for extensions many times, and this time the municipal corporation has said no more extensions, just finish it and hand it over, right? Now, here I would like to say that Sun City was one developer which also had to hand over, but they completed all their civic infrastructure and gave. And as a result, that township does not have a problem, right? So the developers are so used to not conforming to the laws that very few of them, even now when it comes to handover time, conform to it. But DLF is the better one. It has managed its townships much better than others. So, but there are still pending issues which need to be completed.
Yeah, sure. And considering that we are talking about so many smart cities to be built and so many new towns to be townships to be created, because the as the economy progresses and as the economy moves towards in manufacturing and services related sectors, the development of such cities and townships of future, because in past it's largely the public sector which has taken care of that, but the future would require a lot of private partnerships also to come into foray, because there's a lot of technological developments that have happened and a whole lot of those things. So do you think there is a need for a framework and some sort of a guideline for infrastructure development and related matters when it comes to either a PPP or private only model?
There is, Prasun, the smart cities model framework is fine. But the thing is that a lot of townships are being built by the private sector. And very large townships, whether it's the DLF township, South City here, or if you look at what's happening in Mumbai, the Palava township and so on, by Lodas, these are all almost city level townships, right? Hiranandanis and so on. So they have the first 4-5 years when they establish the project and they are completing it in phases, they set up the civic infrastructure very much like a municipal corporation does. But when it is handed over, that process of handing over from private to public is still not perfected yet. And more than ever before, during the COVID, what we realized was whether it is private or public, pandemic does not respect boundaries. So the city has to step in and deliver to private, public, unauthorized everything. As a result, the city needs to have the preeminent role, and everything else is subsumed in that. Therefore, it's important that you understand how to do this, and I think the Bangalore model is something that I keep repeating again and again.
Mhm.
Bangalore, the BBMP has become the custodian of the city. It can raise revenue. It can frame laws. It has got far more powers. The municipal commissioner and the mayor have been given longer tenures. As a result, what they've done is they've used the ward as the basic unit of governance, and they have created public-private partnerships between citizen volunteers and the councillors of each ward. In this process, what happens is that the citizen volunteers are the ones who interface between the consumers and the machine, the civic machinery, and they are ensuring that things happen. And slowly we see the change. But that model seems to me to be the best one that has evolved during the pandemic.
Absolutely, it sounds very responsive model because it goes to the last mile, and that is what we need more and more. And let's hope that the governance of future at city level, at ward level, improves significantly.
Absolutely.
On that note, Jayashree, this is it for this week. Thanks a lot for joining, and we will see you next week.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye bye.